morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Tuesday, the 12th of May, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Now let's get to the stories that matter today. The International Criminal Court confirms an arrest warrant against Senator Bato Dela Rosa, but the Senate says it will block his arrest inside its premises. Senator Tito Soto is out as Senate President after a 13-vote move installed Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. Soto says the ouster may be tied to the impeachment case, but Cayetano denies this. And while all this is happening, the House has impeached Vice President Sara Duterte for the second time. The articles of impeachment will now be transmitted to the Senate for trial. And welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now first in the agenda, the International Criminal Court has confirmed the arrest warrant against Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa. The warrant is now officially unsealed and available to the public. In its ruling, the ICC Pretrial Chamber 1 found that the case falls under the court's jurisdiction and determined there is a reasonable basis to proceed. The tribunal also cited allegations that may constitute crimes against humanity. Yesterday, former Senator Sonny Trillanes brought to the Senate a copy of the ICC arrest warrant against De La Rosa, who appeared in the session after months of absence.
Personal request ni Bato, nasamahan ko daw yung pag-aarestuhin siya. Nandito ngayon na arestuhin siya.
Sino po yung kasama?
That's why I'm here. Diba? Dito yung NBI, arestuhin siya. Dito ako, I showed up.
For now, the Senate stands firm that it will not allow the arrest of De La Rosa while he remains inside the Senate premises. The camp of the senator has asked the Supreme Court to stop any attempt to take him into custody.
Paninindigan ng Senado, ang tradisyon ng Senado na hindi mo basta pwedeng arestuhin sa premises, and we will wait for a final warrant of arrest from the court.
But former Integrated Bar of the Philippines President Attorney Domingo Cayosa said Senator Bato de la Rosa cannot be protected from arrest inside Senate premises if authorities present a valid arrest warrant. In an interview with The Big Story, Cayosa explained that lawmakers are only immune from arrest during Senate sessions and if the offense carries a penalty of 6 years or less. He added that authorities must continue enforcing the ICC arrest warrant against De La Rosa unless the Supreme Court issues a temporary restraining order. Cayosa noted that the enforcement of the law takes precedence over parliamentary courtesy.
You cannot shield yourself from lawful arrest with a validly issued warrant by a recognized court like the ICC. Because the penalty for the crime for which he is being arrested is more than 6 years. And under our Constitution and under our revised penal code, a senator or a lawmaker enjoys immunity from arrest only while Congress or the Senate is in session and only if the imposable penalty for the crime for which he is being arrested is less than 6 years or less. So hindi applicable ito dun sa kaso ni Senator De La Rosa.
Meanwhile, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano is the new Senate President after senators voted to oust Senator Tito Soto from the position. And here's how the leadership change unfolded. Senate Minority Leader Alan Cayetano announced at the start of Monday's plenary session that the minority had the 13 votes needed to replace Senate President Tito Soto. Soon after Cayetano's announcement, Minority Senator Joel Villanueva moved to declare all Senate positions vacant. The motion was carried with 13 senators voting in favor, 9 against, and 2 abstentions. Then, Minority Senator Amy Marcos nominated Cayetano for Senate President, while then still Senate President pro tempore Ping Lacson nominated Soto in an attempt to keep his leadership. But when the Senate presidency was put to a vote, the 13 senators chose Cayetano. Those who voted for Alan Cayetano included Senator Bato Dela Rosa, who suddenly appeared in the Senate after months of being absent. Aside from Dela Rosa, these were the other senators that installed Cayetano, the running mate of former President Rodrigo Duterte in the 2016 elections. Francis Escudero, Jinggoy Estrada, Bongo, Rodante Marcoleta, Amy Marcos, Robin Padilla, and Joel Villanueva. The swing votes came from 4 members of the majority bloc, Senators Loren Legarda, Pia Cayetano, and siblings Camille and Mark Villar. These Cayetano supporters now make up the majority bloc. Those who stuck it out with Soto are now the minority. They are Senators Bam Aquino, Wen Gatchalian, Risa Ontiveros, Panfilo Lacson, Lito Lapid, Francis Pangilinan, Erwin Tulfo, and Rafi Tulfo. Senators J.V. Ejercito and Mig Zubiri, who were part of the then majority, abstained from voting. Meantime, Legarda was named new Senate President pro tempore, replacing Lacson. The leadership change took effect as the House of Representatives were moving to vote on the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte.
It's because of the impeachment, sir, yung nangyaring palitan ng liderato?
Probably. Probably. That's a very strong possibility. Because if I were Senate President, once the House approves the articles of impeachment and sends it to us, I will constitute and convene the impeachment court tomorrow.
But in his first address as Senate President, Cayetano denied the move was about the Vice President's impeachment trial.
Kung kayo sinisisi, kung sinasabi niyo sa news na ang pagpalit ng leadership ay tungkol sa impeachment, hindi po. The impeachment is enshrined in the Constitution.
Well, amid ongoing political tension and leadership shifts in the Senate, the House of Representatives has impeached Vice President Sara Duterte for the second time. Here's the report.
The House voted 257 in favor, 25 against, and 9 abstentions, officially impeaching Vice President Sara Duterte. The vote clearly surpassed the constitutional threshold, prompting the transmittal of the articles of impeachment to the Senate. Ahead of the vote, House Justice Committee Chairperson Jervil Luistro defended the process.
Hindi tayo naghanap ng shortcut. Naghanap tayo ng katotohanan. At maging malinaw po tayo, ang prosesong ito ay hindi paghamak sa mga Pilipinong sumusuporta sa Vice Presidente.
Several members of the Duterte family were present during the session, including Davao City Congressman Pulong Duterte, Omar Duterte, and Harold Duterte. However, before the vote took place, the group walked out of the plenary.
Sir, ano to, form of protest po ba ito, yung pag-walk out, sir?
Anong going to do?
Sir, is this walking out?
Yes.
The articles of impeachment include 4 major allegations: misuse of confidential funds, unexplained wealth, bribery of DepEd officials, and alleged threat against President Bongbong Marcos. Supporters of the move said it was a matter of accountability.
Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, 69% ng mga Pilipino ang gustong harapin ni Sara Duterte ang lahat ng aligasyon laban sa kanya. The numbers do not lie. The majority of Filipinos want to start the impeachment trial, and they want to start it forthwith. Who are we to stand in their way? Hindi tayo dapat matinag sa nangyaring Senate coup. Hindi tayo magpapasindak sa mga bababatas sa supporter ni VP Sara na bigla nilang magpapakita at magtatantrum sa plenary. Pare-pareho silang managot. Simula na ang paglilitis. Convict Sara now.
Meanwhile, several lawmakers opposed the move, including Congressman Kiko Barzaga and Paulo Marcoleta.
As the youngest representative of the Philippine House of Representatives present here today, I speak on behalf of my hopes for a bright future for our nation that is free from corruption and against the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte, the only 2028 presidential candidate who is capable of creating that future. Sara Duterte is our nation's most vocal anti-corruption figure, as she is the first one to reveal the massive flood control corruption in the 2025 budget and the involvement of former Speaker Martin Romualdez and Appropriations Chairman Zaldico.
Anong klaseng kahipokrituhan ito? This impeachment process is not really for accountability.
For their part, the Duterte camp said the burden of proof now rests with the accusers and that they are fully prepared to defend the Vice President before the Senate.
Don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. Well, as we know, the House of Representatives has approved the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte. And once the articles are transmitted, the Senate will have the sole power to try and decide the case. The next step is for the Senate to convene as an impeachment court, where senators will first take an oath of political neutrality before any trial proceedings begin. Duterte will then be formally summoned to answer each article of impeachment, either personally or through her legal counsel. If she declines to appear, the trial will still proceed as if she entered a not guilty plea. And once all articles have been heard, senators will vote on each charge separately. A two-thirds vote of all members of the Senate on any single article will be required to secure a conviction on any single article. And now to talk about the process, we have political analyst Dr. Froilan Calilong. Prof, welcome back to Morning Matters.
Yes, good morning, Pauline. Good morning also to our televiewers. Thank you for having me again.
All right, Professor. Well, yesterday was a very eventful day, to say the least. But personally, how would you describe the series of events that took place yesterday, Monday?
Well, so many things happening in one day. What we thought will just be a vote in the plenary turned out to be a series of eventualities. Of course, leading with the Senate leadership shake up, and then there is also this drama unfolding in the Senate halls involving Senator Bato Dela Rosa and the FBI and many other things. You know, it's really quite overwhelming of all these things happening in just one day. But I think what is more important here is that we focus on what is more pressing at the moment, and this, of course, is the impeachment.
Okay, now speaking of the impeachment, let's go to the vote at the House of Representatives yesterday. For the second time, lawmakers voted to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte. And let's take a look at the numbers here. 257 voted in favor, 25 against, and 9 abstained. Prof, what do the numbers tell us about the current political landscape?
Well, basically, it's very clear that I think the Senate shakeup yesterday did not really create much of a dent as they would expect it, because I believe that many of these lawmakers already made up their mind and already came up with their decisions. I think even as early as last week. So all the things that happened yesterday did not really force them to make a different stance on the matter. And I think many of them were actually convinced about the probability of the vice president becoming involved in this allegations. And I think many of them also would want to see a full-blown trial, if only for the vice president to actually have an avenue by which she may be able to cite her defense. I think this is what they really want. And I think the early announcement of the vice president regarding the fact that she will run did not also create much of a change in the direction of the House in terms of their decision to actually impeach her. In fact, I think the numbers are quite similar to what we saw at the 19th Congress, quite different from what we expect that it will go down this year, but I think it's still the same, more or less.
Well, let's talk about that, Prof. More lawmakers voted in favor of the impeachment this time around compared to last year, 2025, where 215 members endorsed the articles of impeachment to the Senate, and now we have 257. In your opinion, what do you think changed between then and now that may have influenced more congressmen to vote in favor?
I think one of the reasons is because of the tremendous scrutiny that this impeachment complaint actually went through as compared to last year. I think the Committee on Justice really was able to present solid grounds for them to be able to establish the probable cause. And I think this may really have influenced the decision of the majority of the congressmen in the lower house. And of course, we also need to understand, and I don't know if this is really true, about allegations that there were incentives for the decision to actually vote in favor of the impeachment carries with it several incentivizing mechanisms, which of course are yet to be proven. Of course, there are allegations being circulated by Senator Amy Marcos and several other congressmen about this. But of course, there's apparently the need for us to be able to really know if there's really truth in this, especially with the disbursements of the MOP, the upfront payment that is being made to the congressman. Up to this point, I think this is really not yet verified. But I think what is very apparent here is the decision of the lower house, which of course, they really would want to transmit the soonest possible time the articles of impeachment to the Senate, regardless of who is the Senate, the Senate leadership is. I think the decision was really made on the part of the House.
And again, Professor, we saw an overwhelming 80% of House members voting in favor of this impeachment. But so could this also mean that even the former allies of Vice President Duterte are beginning to distance themselves from her?
Actually, it's quite surprising that there are several congressmen that I thought will vote against the impeachment, but they turned out to actually vote in favor of it. And I think this tantamounts to the fact that I don't know if we go by their explanation. They said that they really would want the vice president to have an avenue, a forum, the right forum to be able to air her side. And the only way by which this can be done is through the impeachment court. And if this is their line of reasoning, I think this will have or will need a great deal of explanation and rationalization, especially on the part of the supporters of the vice president, because this early, I think they have already marked these people who signed the petition, and that I think many of them are actually claiming that they will be giving some kind of a backlash later on that will be felt by many of these congressmen. But I think what is very apparent here is the fact that many of them, actually a great majority of them, voted in favor of the impeachment, which shows tremendously that I think the administration still has a full sway, particularly with the decision making in the lower house, as we have seen here in the proceeding that transpired.
Okay, but moving forward, all eyes will now be on the Senate, which will serve as the impeachment court. But Prof, let's first talk about the leadership change that took place yesterday. Rumors of a Senate coup have actually been circulating for many weeks already, right? But what do you think ultimately pushed the senators to secure the 13 votes they needed to unseat former Senate President Tito Soto?
One of the things that we need to see here, Pao, is the timing. Of course, we know for a fact that in politics, nothing exists in vacuum, and nothing is actually born out of mere coincidence. So I think there was really this talks about unseating the former Senate president that has been circulating and for going on for quite some time, and that they only had to do it yesterday. I mean, the formal unseating of the former Senate president. And I think this is really something that they have been planning all along. I mean, in the Senate, I believe that there are already calculations that have been made, strategic alliances that were being brokered behind closed doors, I believe, and the provision actually was just met yesterday. And coincidentally, this was also the time that the lower house is actually voting in the plenary. So it's like, for me, it's like the Senate trying to steal the spotlight from the Congress and trying to get their movement. But what we need to see here, of course, is that this change in leadership will tremendously affect the course of the impeachment proceeding, presumably because the current leadership, practically by Senate President Adam Peter Cayetano, will really be looking at the procedural context of the impeachment, on the constitutional imperatives of the impeachment, even the jurisdiction. I think it may cause some kind of unnecessary delay if you're going to compare it with the former Senate president, who really would want to convene the Senate to an impeachment court right away as soon as the impeachment articles had been transmitted to them. But I think the same will not be true for Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. I think there might be some kind of delay here, which will cause, of course, the impeachment the steam to lower down a bit. You know, the momentum may be deliberately affected by this decision to delay the impeachment proceeding, and it may also create a change in the perception of the public. It may also create a different kind of framing, of course, with the media and with the people and the public perception about the Senate's mandate and their prerogative to actually conduct this proceeding.
Well, after he took his oath yesterday, newly installed Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano actually insisted that the Senate shakeup is not related in any way to VP Sara's impeachment. And he also said, if I can just reiterate, Prof. No, the impeachment will be much more than dismissing a complaint because of political affiliation. And it also has so much more. It is also so much more than convincing someone without evidence. Parehong hindi pwede yon. What message do you think he was trying to send there? And how crucial will the leadership of SP Alan Peter Cayetano be in setting the tone of the impeachment trial?
I think first, these are the things that he will be saying, because it's not going to be very acceptable, at least the tone, if it's going to say that we have the numbers and clearly we're going to be voting for acquittal. Of course, that is not politically acceptable at any front. So of course he will be saying those things, but we need to understand at the end of the day, it's really a political numbers game. And now that the tables have been turned, that they are now the new majority, I think it will be a lot easier to say that conviction on the part of the vice president may be quite difficult at this point. Although, because we need to understand that in the Senate presidency, you actually are creating some kind of fulcrum. Because you're at the center, and so there's a tendency for the other senators to actually gravitate in your line or in your decision. Not to mention the fact that I think the Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano, like I said a while ago, is very keen on the procedural context. So you could remember that in the previous impeachment, he was the one who actually suggested that the impeachment articles be remanded back to the Congress. And I think this is something that we might be expecting as well right now. But I do hope that if there's one bright spot, I believe here, is that the Senate composition is also up for some changes at the moment. And I hope that critical committee chairmanships will be also having some changes, including the very crucial Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, which I'm also expecting that there will be a change. In this case, I think the flood control scandal will be brought forth to the light. And again, this may cast some kind of setting aside of the impeachment if ever the attention of the Senate will now be funneled back to the flood control probe.
Well, 16 votes are needed, Professor, for the conviction of Vice President Sara Duterte in the Senate, right? But how difficult will it be for the prosecution team from the House of Representatives to reach that threshold? What are some of the other factors here that could still alter the outcome of the impeachment trial?
Well, number one is if the testimonies and the evidences that will be presented will be clearly insurmountable to the detriment or to the disadvantage of the vice president, I think this may also create some kind of a decision on the part of the senators to actually vote not only by virtue of alliances, but also by virtue of the legalities. Of course, what I mean is by legalities is the weight of this evidences and testimonies will have to be the basis for them casting their votes. Of course, this is something that is quite difficult right now because you remember that in the majority there is already this clear Duterte bloc to begin with, composed of around 5 to 6 senators. And right now, since they are the new majority, it's going to be quite difficult. If you're just basically looking at the fluidity of the alliances, it's going to be very difficult to vote for a conviction, especially if you're only looking at the coalitions, at the alliances. But if we're going to look at the legalities, and that is something that we need to see later on, and this will be incumbent upon the prosecution on how they will be able to present this. Public perception may actually be influenced to a great extent here because the senators, even if they will be voting by virtue of their alliances and their coalition, they may actually change their mind in the last minute, depending on the certainty of this evidences, because this will definitely create attraction in terms of how it will create public perception and form public opinion.
And that public perception is very important as we prepare for the 2028 national elections. But for now, thank you very much for joining us this morning and for breaking all that down for us. That was political analyst Dr. Froilan Calilong. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Pauline, and God bless.
Do stay tuned. Morning Matters. We'll be back after this short break. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Well, as we know, the International Criminal Court has confirmed that the arrest warrant issued against Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa has been officially made public. The warrant was issued by Pretrial Chamber 1 on November 6, 2025. And in the document, the ICC said De La Rosa may be held liable as an indirect co-perpetrator for crimes allegedly committed between July 2, 2016 and the end of April 2018, a period during which at least 32 people were killed. Yesterday, former Senator Sonny Trillanes brought a copy of the ICC arrest warrant to the Senate, where De La Rosa appeared in session after months of absence. And now to discuss this development further, we are joined by ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti. Good morning, Attorney. Thank you for being back here on the program.
Good morning, Pauline.
All right, so Attorney, last night the ICC has already confirmed that there is indeed an arrest warrant that has been issued against Senator Bato Dela Rosa. How significant is development, Attorney, now, especially that the warrant has been unsealed and made official to the public?
Well, I guess now the public would and should have a role in the enforcement of this warrant because Bato Dela Rosa refuses to cooperate with the court or with Filipino authorities. As an elected official, he has to answer to the clamor of the people. And if the people ask that he face these charges, then he should. The Senate should not coddle or hide. That's what it feels right now. They're hiding a fugitive, not only a fugitive from justice, but a fugitive from so many other fact-finding investigations as well. It's not only the ICC that's looking for him, it's also apparently the PNP/the DILG because of an investigation into the Davao deaths. So he has a lot to answer for and he should not hide behind the walls of the Senate.
Well, since this document was already made available to the public, Attorney, nakita po natin that the warrant was actually originally issued in November 2025, but it only became available to the public due to changes in circumstances. Siguro help us understand, Attorney, what exactly triggered the unsealing of this ICC arrest warrant?
Well, the unsealing of the warrant can come from one, motu proprio, or from the judges themselves. They decided that because of the prevailing conditions, they have to unseal it. Second, it could come from any of the parties. It could be the prosecutor or, I don't know, even if probably the defense if they have an idea. Pero as it appears, this document was only available to the prosecutor. So the secret copy was released. This is sort of a no-no in the ICC. I'm sorry, but Senator Trillanes was holding a secret ex parte copy available only to the prosecution. So maybe it poses an opportunity for disinformation, which is why the ICC said, all right, let's just release the actual copy so that the public will not be misled. And second, the thing is, the ICC puts it seals it. So, in a sense, to ensure the enforcement of the warrant. Kumbaga po, may ibang warrant silang hindi ina-announce para masiguradong maaresto. Katulad ng nangyari kay Duterte, sabihin na natin. Kumpara ito dun sa experience, dun sa in-announce nilang warrant kay Netanyahu, kay Putin. When the ICC chooses to make the warrants public, it is in a sense trying to deter future crimes in their cases of the sitting leaders of government and with ongoing conflict. So in the cases of Russia and in Ukraine and in Gaza, there were ongoing conflicts. If you announce there's a warrant of arrest against the perpetrators of the conflict, probably they will stop doing it. That's one thing. But then on the other, it weighs against enforcement of the warrant. So I guess the ICC sees now that making it public will aid or help in the enforcement of the warrant. Kumbaga sa ngayon, nakikita nila na kahit publiko man o hindi publiko, it will not matter kung mahuhuli man si Bato. Kasi si Bato, kahit papakitaan mo yan, baka sabi niya, ay, peke naman yan. So ngayon, sinasabi ng ICC, pag may nagpakita sa iyo ng warrant, huwag mo nang questionin yung authenticity ng warrant.
So if that's the case, attorney, mukhang napangunahan ni Senator Trillanes itong arrest warrant by showing this alleged secret copy pala from the ICC. So with that said also, was the NBI acting on an actual arrest warrant when they were trying to serve this to Senator Bato Dela Rosa yesterday inside the Senate premises?
Well, I wouldn't know. I'm sorry. But NBI was there precisely at the moment that Senator Trillanes was there holding a copy. So, from my point of view, they should have, or they might have also had a copy. But then again, it's just not today. So, we're looking back at November when the warrant was allegedly issued, and as it appears, it was really issued that time. Bato had information. So, from my point of view, Bato already knows that there is a warrant against him. It's just that he took the risk yesterday, from what people say, to vote for the Senate, quote-unquote, coup. Diba? So, it was personal. It was a clearly political decision. And sadly, he did it not for the Filipino people whom he serves, but he did it for the Dutertes, whom he has pledged his allegiance.
Well, attorney, now some senators or some allies of Senator Bato Dela Rosa are arguing that as a sitting senator, he enjoys protections or yung tinatawag nating parliamentary immunity. But it turns out that parliamentary immunity also comes with two conditions. One is that the Senate must be in session, and two, lawmakers are only immune from arrest if the offense carries a penalty of 6 years or less. So with that being said, attorney, pasok po ba yan para kay Senator Bato Dela Rosa?
Definitely not. This is a crime of great atrocity. This is considered among the 4 worst crimes in the world, which is precisely why the ICC, the Nuremberg tribunals, were put in. Kahit saan sa buong mundo, dapat bawal ito. Crimes of aggression, war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. That is the charge against Bato Dela Rosa at this point. And to be frank, parliamentary immunity in its purest sense actually pertains to speeches made in Congress. So, parliamentary immunity and privilege, kumbaga, kung magsasalita ka kasi sa Kongreso, dapat, or magtatrabaho ka sa Kongreso, meaning magpa-participate ka sa debates, dapat ay walang abala sa iyo. At dito sa puntong ito, hindi ganun eh. He's not doing his job. He's hiding from the law. Kaya I cannot appreciate any form of immunity for Bato Dela Rosa, especially as the ICC strictly put that in the Rome Statute. So yung Rome Statute po, yun yung batas na gumawa ng ICC, nilagay nila noon Article 27, irrelevance of official capacity. Kahit sino ka pa, kahit sa bansa mo, kinikilala na, ay presidente ka at may presidential immunity, hindi yan valid dahil hindi yan titingnan ng ICC na shield against criminal liability. Hindi po ibig sabihin ng parliamentary impunity ay impunity o kawalang pananagutan.
Pero I guess, attorney, mabibring up na naman yung tanong na do international laws override, take precedence over our own domestic laws?
Oo, na parang pinagbabangga lagi. International law should not be directly against national law, especially if it has been adopted into our laws. When we adhere to a particular treaty or an agreement with the international community, other countries, there is an assumption. There is, kumbaga, a premise that this law is consistent with our law. Of course, in the Philippines, the supreme law is the Constitution. So, in a sense, that the treaty is not unconstitutional. But the thing is, people forget that we were a member of the Rome Statute, or rather, we were a member of the ICC. We signed the Rome Statute. So, it is not primordially incompatible with Philippine law. Kinaya natin. Maging miyembro tayo ng mahigit ilang taon. At ibig sabihin nun, tama, compatible yung batas na yung nasa ICC, yung Rome Statute, at yung batas natin. Nga lang, due to political reasons, we withdrew. But it was not because it was unconstitutional or incompatible with our Constitution. Ang sinasabi po nung papasukin ko na yung sa parang complementarity na parang, bakit natin sinusunod yung batas, yung Rome Statute, na kinalasan na natin. Kasi nagkaroon po siya ng epekto nung panahon na miyembro tayo. Huwag po tayong sarado ang isip na, umalis na tayo dyan But we were a member. And at the time that we were a member, we incurred responsibilities. We cannot just up and go. The ICC or the Rome Statute was precisely written so that sitting head of state, a powerful official, cannot simply escape responsibility by saying, okay, I will leave the ICC, I will eschew the Rome Statute so that I will be safe. This is, I guess, a mistake on the part of the Dutertes during their time when they looked at the Rome Statute and simply said, you do not exist. It was only in 2018 when they realized this is problematic for them, which is precisely why they withdrew. Again, we only withdrew from the Rome Statute to shield Rodrigo Duterte. He thought it was enough, but it is not.
Okay, so attorney, let's talk about the possible scenarios here moving forward. What happens if Senator Bato Dela Rosa refuses to voluntarily submit to the ICC arrest warrant, to the ICC's jurisdiction, and if he continues to, let's say, stay within the Senate premises, or kahit makatakas pa nga po siya, and go back into hiding at hindi po ulit siya pumasok sa Senado, ano po yung pwedeng mangyari? What could unfold in the coming days and weeks here?
You know, one scenario that I do not want to happen is a nanlaban scenario. Sa kanila yan. Kasi this is precisely what happened during the war on drugs. The police said they were going after criminals. And in this case, the police, the PNP or the NBI, is going after a suspected criminal, Bato Dela Rosa. You see here the video of him running from NBI officials. Buti na lang hindi po nangyari sa kanya ang nanlaban scenario. Ang punto dito ay kailangang mahuli siya. So in whatever shape or form mangyayari yan, yung actual arrest, inaabangan po. But what is clear is that we have to follow the law. The arrest has to be within the rules of court of the Philippines. At kung sa atin po, ang pagkaka-aresto dapat ay pakitaan siya ng warrant of arrest, posasan o i-restrain, tapos basahan ng nung ano yung kaso sa kanya, tapos basahan ng Miranda rights. And then, Whatever processes, he has to be eventually surrendered to the court. Kung magtatago siya, edi para na namang Tom and Jerry ito. Maghahabulan yan all over the Philippines kung ano man. Pero yung isang possibility din ay yung Zaldico, Alice Guo, Arnold Teves scenario where criminal or somebody wanted will leave the country. Ang naging experience natin dyan ay depende yan sa bansa kung saan siya pupunta. Pero kung dito sa Pilipinas, I implore the Philippine National Police, the NBI, to really do their job. There is a warrant already. Enforce the warrant.
And attorney, the ICC said the reason why an arrest warrant has now been issued against Senator Dela Rosa is because they believe there are reasonable grounds already to believe that he committed crimes against humanity as well through his involvement dito sa common plan nga na tinatawag doon sa drug war. In ICC proceedings, help us understand, attorney, gaano ba kataas yung threshold ng reasonable grounds? And how different is this case of Senator Bato from that of former President Rodrigo Duterte? Pareho ba sila ng kasong haharapin? Will it be separate? Ano po yung magiging process?
Pauline, kung sa Pilipinas, familiar tayo sa term na probable cause. Yeah, it's like that. It's similar in the sense that probable cause or reasonable basis to believe is something more than suspicion, than mere suspicion. When you say reasonable, there is basis, hindi basta-basta hinugot, meaning there is evidence. And second, basis to believe that this person committed. Kumbaga, the evidence shows that this person is responsible for these particular crimes. In this case, or in this situation, kasi this is part of an ongoing investigation, established na ang fact na merong naganap na krimen. Kaya lampas doon, this person is responsible. That is the point of the ongoing investigation to determine who are responsible. There are 8 names. Duterte's name is on top of the list that were submitted by the prosecution as among the indirect co-perpetrators of Rodrigo Duterte. Their cases will proceed separately, independently from Duterte's. Kaya po, ang lalabas sa Pilipinas, posible, kung mahuhuli si Bato, posibleng 2 ang kaso na lilitisin. Kung mapapansin nyo, magkaiba yung incidents na tinutukoy or ini-impute particularly to Bato and to Rodrigo Duterte. In Duterte's case, there were, I think, 78 incidents identified. In Bato's case, there are 32 allegedly committed between July 3, 2016 to April 2018. So this was during his term as a PNP chief. Later on, the ICC noted that he was also served as Bucor chief. But let's see how it would unfold. He has an entirely different timeline compared to Duterte. In Duterte's case, mayor, vice mayor, and then president. Kay Bato Dela Rosa, chief of Davao, PNP chief, and then Bucor chief. So it's very exciting because I would say there would be some reference to what happened in the Bucor, yung mga nakakulong pong mga quote-unquote drug lords. Tingnan natin kung how they play into the entire picture.
Pero with that said, attorney, does this also mean that other arrest warrants could follow for other co-perpetrators? Napangalanan na po yan during the confirmation of charges hearing. Andyan po si Senator Bongo, si former Davao City Police Chief Vicente Danao, pati na rin sila former Justice Secretary Vitaliano Aguirre. Posible po ba na magkaroon din ng arrest warrants for them?
Yes, it's absolutely possible. They have been named as co-perpetrators. And as you see, that from on the part of the ICC, wala silang sasantuhin, walang sisinuhin. As soon as they find that there is reasonable basis to believe, yun po, again, that's a standard that they use. It's comparable to probable cause that we use in the Philippines for the issuance of, or for the filing of cases, for the issuance of warrants of arrest. There can be warrants issued against them by the ICC.
And finally, Attorney, can we get your thoughts rin on the withdrawal of the lead counsel of the former president, si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman, as the lawyer of President Duterte? Ano po yung magiging implication niyan sa kanyang defense? And will it have any implication doon din po sa timeline ng proceedings?
Well, it should not have an implication on the timeline. Dapat, lalo na, sakto kasi yung timing. Kaya, in a way, nagpapasalamat din ako na hindi nila ginawa ito a few months back or a few months forward. At this point, the trial chamber has only called for what day is today, 12th, has called for the status conference hearing on May 27th. So the new lead counsel will come just in time to attend that first status conference hearing. That is crucial because that's the time when the judges will ask the parties, when do you think trial could start? It's just that at that point, perhaps the lawyer will say, can we have the trial in 2028? Hindi naman po pwede yun. Kaya there should be sufficient time. So we're looking at a window anywhere between October 2027 to October 2026 this year, up to February 2027. It could come at the latter end of that period, but then he cannot or she cannot ask for a much later time. Now, what would be the impact of a change in personality? Then I guess it would boil down to the tactics or the strategy in litigating the defense. But then, again, on the part of the victims, we don't want to speculate, but we're not seeing a clear defense for Duterte. How do you defend the indefensible? He admitted to the crimes. He's on television stating that he has ordered these crimes. He is unremorseful. And there's plenty of evidence on our part of the victims to show that the crimes were committed with his full knowledge, widespread and so systematically. For the new defense lawyer, all we can say is good luck and see you in court.
All right, and on that note, thank you very much for your time and for your insights. Was ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you, Ingat.
Now, don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The 2026 MPTC Tour of Luzon is now on its 13th stage, which will be an individual time trial. And for more details, let's bring in our mobile journalist, Denise Valdesancho. Hi, Denise. What can we expect today?
Good morning, Pauline. Today's individual time trial of the tour will be beginning around 10 a.m. here in Lingayen, Pangasinan, particularly the Lingayen Bay Walk. Diyan magsisimula at diyan magtatapos. It's going to be a loop within 20 kilometers of individual time trial. Again, it's 1 minute per rider here in Lingayen. But later on, we will see how things will be shaken up in the standings, since yesterday in the 11th stage or the 12th stage of the tour, nanguna ang Frenchman na si Antoine Ubi in this stage going uphill sa mga Tarem, Pangasinan. That's 141.4 kilometers. Pero pumangalawa dyan ang leader ng tour na si Nikita Shulchenko after Ubi. And after that, ay most combative rider din si Ubi. So today, it's gonna be intense because in the individual time trials, people know that it's a Nikita who always gets the sprints, because in the first individual time trial, it was Nikita Shulchenko of LCW na nanguna. But when it comes to uphill races kasi, nakakahabol itong si Antoine Ubi. But let's see today how many riders it's gonna be and kung sino yung mangunguna at kung makakahabol si Ubi in the general leader classification.
All right, well, Denise, now that the tour is already on its 13th stage, are the cyclists still in high spirits? I mean, as the race progresses, what would they say is the biggest challenge at this point?
Mm. Well, in my interview with Anton Ubi, well, the main challenge, especially for foreigners, will always be the weather. Hindi nga biro na makatapos ka ng 14 stages, unlike last year na it's just 8 stages. So, malaking factor dito, not just the uphill, kasi sanay naman sila when it comes to ascents overseas, but the weather of the Philippines is really very crucial here when it comes to their races. Yesterday, Anton Ubi mentioned that this is not easy compared to the Besang Pass uphill stage that he did last stage 10, if I'm not mistaken. Mas mahirap yung kahapon going up to mga Tarem, Pangasinan because pinagsama dito hindi lang yung ahon but also the hot weather. Pumapatak siya up to 36 to 40 degrees Celsius. So, going up to the finish line, talagang isa-isa na lang na naglalabasan yung mga siklista natin dahil nga dito nasusubok yung kanilang endurance, yung talagang mga trainings nila. And as the stages go by, umuunti na rin ang umuunti yung mga pumipirma in attendance na mga siklista. But for Anton, I asked him if the ascent going to Baguio tomorrow is going to be easier. Well, he's looking forward to it, but he knows it's not going to be easier. But for the meantime, they'll be focusing on today's individual time trial kasi dito nga sila posibleng maghabulan since si Nikita Shevchenko pa rin yung leader ng overall stages natin from stage 1 to stage 13 right now, Pauline.
All right, well, best of luck to all the participants and do stay safe there. That was mobile journalist Denise Valdesancho. The Department of Education has launched the Learners TeleSafe Contact Center helpline to provide students with direct access to mental health support. Through the hotline 33733, calls from students may be forwarded to counselors at the National Center for Mental Health for immediate assistance. The helpline also has a mobile number and email address where learners may seek help and support. The Department of Education said PLDT Incorporated provided the contact center technology that enables a seamless transfer of calls to specialists. DepEd said the system is designed to improve response time and to make mental health support more accessible to students in need. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.